it's nice because we don't have one of the big three in it this time around. What are you expecting from it? Because we've got one team who's been in it before and one who hasn't.
Yeah, I think firstly it's really exciting for the growth of women's football in England that it's going to be a different name on the trophy regardless. I think that was a big talking point around the semi-final with that it would be really exciting to have that. So in general, that's just a really exciting point. But I think it's going to be a really interesting final because neither side have had the most consistent season and neither side have had the most experiences in cup finals. Man United were in it last season and got to the final, but it's going to be a really interesting one. I don't think it's going to be the prettiest game of football. I don't think it's going to be the easiest game of football, but I think it's going to be a really, really exciting game and a really exciting afternoon.
I mean, when do finals ever live up to the hype?
Well,
I mean, we've seen, as you said, neither team have been that consistent, but it feels like Spurs are they've got a style, they've got a way they want to play. They're trying to align everything club-wide. We've seen that from Villaham. Maybe that's what we haven't seen from United, though.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to how the team look and how the team feel. And I think one of the big arguments against Skinner and how difficult his season has been is that the players don't look together. They don't look inspired. They don't look comfortable. And I think that's a big part of why probably Spurs have had a better season on paper than United, is to do with that cohesiveness and that togetherness. And there's a lot to talk about togetherness along every club, but I do think it is really important. And I think we've seen the fight that Spurs has that I don't think we've really seen from United. But I'd be really interested from your perspective on whether the way Man United were in the final last season, they lost to Chelsea, whether you think that that's going to give them a bit of fight and a bit of edge, and or does the underdog element with Spurs actually put them as the front runner?
I think Wembley is such an it's a unique occasion, right? Like, you get on that pitch, and I know, we're Londoners as well, and we it's Wembley, but there is something special about that pitch. It's something that players all around the world talk about. And I think United having that experience last year, even though they lost, they've had the walk around, they've got the nerves out the way, they're in a place where they can kind of build on that. Whereas I think Spurs, and you've got some insight on this and what they've been doing to prepare, but I think Spurs, once you get onto that pitch, sometimes you can have a bit of a wobble, but I don't know. I think underdog maybe, but I think they're pretty calm about stuff. But I'd like to know, because you were talking about this earlier, a little bit about what they've been doing to prepare for that occasion for Wembley.
Yeah, as you said, it's such a deer in the headlights moment, I think, for any player their first time at Wembley. And I think you could put all the things in place for it to not be so big, but being on that stage, it's impossible to kind of make that feel any less special. So Spurs went down to Wembley a week ago to have a walk around, see the dressing rooms, get a feel for the place, especially some of the players that have never played at Wembley before. Even just being in that environment, picturing what it's like, doing a lot of that visual and mental side of things to really try and get themselves in a headspace where they can compete at Wembley, which I think is really good. It's a initiative that I haven't really heard other clubs do before ahead of big finals, which I think it shows quite a lot in terms of how Spurs want to prepare. They've been using lots of imagery about they had a bus, the Tottenham bus, and at each stop, at each game in the road to the final was a different point of the destination, and the destination obviously being Wembley. And so they've kind of visualized how they've got to this point, and they've been using that as a big motivator. But now they're here, there's, in my opinion, not that much they can really do to properly prepare themselves for how it's going to feel at Wembley, because everyone's going to react differently. So Robert was talking today about yoga and working with professionals and the psychology element of it, of how to embrace, that you're in a cup final, but how to not go, oh my God, I'm in a cup final. So it's going to be really interesting. But I think, like you said, underdog is always a really interesting term, because it almost alludes to the fact that maybe they are unprepared or that they're not going to be as capable. But I think in this instance, they might be an element of underdog, but they certainly are definitely in there to give a good fight, and I think will do everything they possibly can to take it to United. But obviously from a United perspective, it's not been a good season and Skinner is on thin ice. And so I'd be really interested to hear whether you think this could potentially save Skinner's job? I know we've heard that possibly he's staying, but kind of will this be enough to make this a successful season?
It's tricky. I think when you look at United, well, you look at United as a club as a whole, we know that there's stuff on the men's side, and our cup finals saving Ten Hag. Are we looking at a cup final saving Skinner? Is it enough? And I think you've got kind of different pools and considerations of, you want a piece of silverware, but that's a bit of a plaster over some structural damage here. I think we've seen, as we talked about, Spurs this season have a lot of progression. They've got growth. They know what path they're on. United, it's felt like that path. I think it's under a canopy. It's breaking up a bit. It's not firm pavement they're walking down. I don't think Skinner still knows his best starting 11. We've seen some sort of changes here and there. Yes, he has had injuries, as has everyone, but I don't think a win at Wembley should be enough to save someone's job these days. I think it needs to be about what you're doing over the course of the season, how you're looking, your performances, not just one-off results. And yes, you've got to get to Wembley, but again, if we look at the path, other than being Chelsea, it was quite straightforward. I think it was quite similar last season as well. It was quite an easy route to the final for Spurs, for United. Even they didn't really perform to their best on that day. So I don't think Skinner's in any danger. I think, as you said, we did know that his job's safe, and yes, with Ineos coming in and they've got time to think and have their own kind of assessment. But I don't think it should be enough to save someone's job if they've come in after such a poor season. But anything can happen when you get onto that pitch. I want to know, even if we do or don't see Spurs parking that figurative or literal bus, what your predictions are.
I've gone Tottenham. I know when we were doing our little preview written piece, we both had quite different opinions. I think for me, Spurs have done a lot of the groundwork this season to really lay foundations to be a cohesive team, and a lot of their success obviously has been around Grace Clinton, who's obviously on loan from United at Spurs. So big predicament for her is that she can't play in the final. And obviously Tottenham have used her and she's been a great asset to the side, but obviously they can't use her this weekend. So ahead of when they played each other in the league and it was that 2-2 draw, I would have said probably they're not going to be able to figure it out. But it seemed then that they actually managed to figure out a way to play without her. And I think that's been really key, is that they've kind of learned how to get the best out of other players without one of their key players on the pitch, which is really difficult to do and haven't really had a lot of time to do that. If they hadn't figured that out, I would have said probably United take the lead. But I think knowing the history with the club and how determined they are to lift a trophy and how much actually experience they've got in that side with Bethany England, Drew Spence. I mean, Becky Spencer was our 10th FA Cup final. Most of them, she was an unused substitute, but even just being in that environment is a lot. And yeah, I love the story of an underdog. So I'm gonna give it to Tottenham, but I have a feeling you're probably going to go the other way.
I think there's so much that to like and admire about what Spurs are doing, and as you said, that draw, it did look going into it that Spurs don't have it, chance. Grace Clinton very much the elephant in the room today and on Sunday, but yeah, they did work it out. They conceded late, maybe bit of a wake up call for United in that game as well, because they probably thought that they were going to win. I just think you have to lose a final to win a final. I think we've seen that so often in loads of different competitions, and it's not what you come back stronger. It's just there's something you've got to get over, some kind of subconscious mental hump. And United did that last year, and it set them up for this year. Maybe the Spurs loss will set up a future of silverware. But yeah, I think it's too tough for Spurs in their first year. So I'm going to go United, and I'm going to keep the theme of us never agreeing on our predictions.